When someone asks you who you are, what do you tell them? Are you the titles that are slapped next to your name? Are you the trophies that are accumulated on your cupboard? Are you all the trauma that you've experienced? Are you who your friends think you are? Are you who your parents think you are? Which version of you is actually you? What makes you you? What is that thing that is your individual, not individual, what is that thing that is your truest, highest, purest self? A lot of times when you meet someone and you ask them, who are you? They're going to tell you their name. And then you're going to be like, oh, but that's your name. Who are you really? They might tell you, oh, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm this and that. And then you're like, cool, that's your profession, but who are you? And then they'll tell you, oh, life story that they think that defines them as a person. And then it's like, no, your life story, that's your life story, but who are you? And they'll be like, well, I'm a human being in this physical body. And then you're like, well, what about when you were 10 years old and you had a different body and you were looking into the mirror? Who was that? Was that still you? And they go like, then who are you? The question about who you are is a very interesting one to answer because, and we're going to use what I'm talking about today to explain that further, and that is the shadow. Carl Jung coined the term of the shadow, and he explained it as this part of our psyche that is repressed. And I've made a few really cute but not so artsy diagrams here to kind of explain what happens, what is the shadow, how is it born, and why do you need to learn about it, right? What is the relevance to your life right now, today? Why literally understanding this concept is key to recognizing that it can very well change your whole life once you become aware of it. Because the thing that I always talk about is how reality is, we all experience our own version of reality, right? And so when things are happening in your life, you just think that that's what life is like. And that's because you aren't aware yet. Once we become aware of a greater truth and we become aware of the parts of ourselves that we are unconscious to, that we're sleeping to, we can then begin to almost like we can begin to go on to another level of our evolution, of our growth, and see life from a higher perspective. Today, we're going to keep it real simple. We're going to talk about three things. Your ego, not the ego that you think I'm talking about. You probably think ego, oh my God, that person has so much ego. They're so stuck up. No, the ego is actually a part of the psyche that Carl Jung calls the id or the ego. And then there's your true self, and then there's your shadow. Your ego, your id is essentially like your ideal self, right? It's who you, let's say who you wish you were. You believe that you're this version of you. This is your best, highest, like idealized version that can never make any mistakes, that is perfect, that is beyond flaws and all of that. That's your ego. Then your true self is essentially like a combination of light and dark. It's all parts of you. It's the part of you that is jealous and the part of you that's not jealous, the part of you that's loving and the part of you that has the capacity to be apathetic and unkind, the part of you that's kind, the part of you that's present, the part of you that's ignorant. Your true self is really a combination of the light and dark, and the eternal duality of man is so interesting because there's always been this concept of light and dark and night and day, and we like to believe that we have this illusion oftentimes, which comes from the ego, that, you know, I'm holier than thou and I'm so incredible, I'm perfect or whatever. And we want to believe in a one-sided world. We want to believe in a world where only good exists and bad doesn't. Or some people believe that only bad exists and good doesn't. And here's the thing, right? A concept I want you to wrap your head around as we walk through today's journey is that every story you've ever heard, every great story you've ever heard has a hero and a villain. And the reason, the idea behind today's video is to recognize and almost become aware and awake to the truth that in our story, we are both the hero and the villain. So how is this shadow formed? What is the shadow? Let's get right into it. Now, when you're a kid, when we're born as our truest self. We're born as unconditional love. We are pure source energy. And we do not see a one-sided world, or we don't see the world as black and white. We see it as it is. We see it, we're very open and receptive to everything. We're very open and receptive to our own authenticity. We are very open and receptive to being who we are unconditionally. It's unencumbered by other people's opinions and their beliefs or whatever. We're so unlimited in our truest nature. And so now, as you're a child, and you begin to go through life, and you are then told you do something. Let's say that I'll put this into perspective. Let's say that you grew up in a house where it was completely wrong for you to ever disagree with adults. And it was like, I don't care what grandma's saying, I don't care what grandpa's saying. They could say the most outrageous thing, but they're right because they're an adult. Grew up, and maybe the first time they said something outrageous and you were like, hey, that's not how it is, or hey, I disagree with you, or whatever, and then you were reprimanded for it, and then you were told that you're not supposed to do that, it's not nice to do this, it's not nice to do that, and then you develop this shame around that behavior that, well, if I use my voice, I will be rejected. You take someone's disapproval as rejection. Of course, you're a baby, right? Anytime you're told that this thing is bad, you go like, okay, cool, it's not me. And this not me thing goes into your shadow. And now you almost repress this part of you, the part of you that has the ability to use your voice, the part of you that has the ability to stand up for yourself, the part of you that has the ability to say, to call it like it is, right? And you repress that part of you, and you reject that part of you, and you say, well, that's not who I am. And then at the same time, what you do is that, for example, you stop standing up to them, and you stop like telling them that, hey, it's not like this or whatever, and you become this quiet little puppet that anyone can control, and you're always agreeing with someone, always nice, always polite, always kind, whatever, and you get love for it, you get acceptance for it, you get validation for it, and you're like, ooh, this behavior is good, this behavior, I need to keep this. This goes into your ego. Now this goes into your ego, and your ego is like a mask. It's a facade, right? So your ego, it goes into your ego, and then that's the version you want to showcase to the world. You will pretend by suppressing your authentic voice and always being kind and polite. You will pretend like that's just who you are as a person. Are you all like following me? All the behavior that you felt shamed for as a child, in whether it was conscious or unconscious, but every time you felt like I shouldn't behave this way, and I shouldn't do this thing, or I shouldn't do that thing, or it's not nice to do this, it's not nice to do that, you put those parts of yourself in your shadow. And the interesting thing is that most people have this belief that, the shadow is the dark part of you and the dark side of whatever. But really, when we're honest, no, it's actually, it also holds your strengths. It also holds some of your things, some parts of your personality that make you unique, right? So for example, if you were a loud and creative and expressive kid, and you grew up in a household where you were told that, it's not good to be loud. You're supposed to talk quietly. You're supposed to hush, and you're supposed to be very soft-spoken and polite. Then you repress that part of you. You repress your uniqueness, your authenticity. Because you think that, because when you're a child, like your survival depends on your adults. And so in order to survive, you needed their approval constantly. You needed their validation. You needed their acceptance. And you sort of developed this thing that, well, if I need to get their acceptance, if I need them to validate me, then I need to be who they want me to be. And the thing is that most people never leave that energy off the inner child. And even as they're adults, they never learn to unlearn those traits that they picked up along the way, and actually allow their the parts that they had repressed to come out and play. And there's so much shame around the shadow that causes people to run from it, run from accepting it, run from admitting it, and feel ashamed of having it. Anything that you were told that this is good, you were like, okay, it goes into the ego. This is the part, this is who I want to project that I am to the world. And anything that was bad, according to the adults at that time, went in the shadow. We're clear till now, right? Now let's get to this part. Now your shadow is your wounded self. Your shadow is your unhealed inner child. Your shadow is the part of you that you believe is not worthy of love. The truth is that it's not even you who doesn't believe that. It's because other people around you made you feel that way. You picked on their belief and you convinced yourself that you made it your own. And you told yourself that it's not worthy of being loved. It's not worthy of being shown out to the world. And so the beliefs were that I'm not lovable as I am, I'm not worthy, and I'm broken. That's what this whole thing, that's the message it gives you. That there's something wrong with who I am authentically. That's why I need to put the mask of the ego when I go out in the world. And I need to behave a certain way, and I need to be a certain person to be liked and fit and conform to other people so that they can accept and like me. And the truth about it all is that it doesn't give us the fulfillment that we believe it will. Instead, it makes us feel very empty. It makes us feel like we are disillusioned by it because we know the truth. Deep in your heart, the truth that you're putting up a mask in front of the world. And I think that in the world of social media, in this like plastic world, this is so common that people, their Instagrams are this epitome of perfection. I'm the perfect wife and the perfect mother and the perfect father and the perfect son and the perfect this and the perfect that, and everything's so perfect. Everything's so filtered. I don't have a bad day. I'm always happy. I'm always great. I'm always this. I'm always that. And the more that other people see it, they start feeling more inferior about their own lives. And the truth is that everyone's just living through the filter of the ego. Whoa. Damn. So, that was funny. So yeah, everyone's living through the filter of this ego. And it's so rare to find people who are willing to be vulnerable, willing to be honest, willing to share the full truth, willing to share the unfiltered truth, willing to say that, you know what, it's not all perfect. It is hard. I am struggling. How many people have you recently met that could admit that truth to you? That it's not as glamorous as it looks like. The idea here is that if we want to live a fulfilled life, if we want to actually have any shot at feeling joy, feeling freedom, feeling liberation, then we have to let the facade go. We have to drop the ego. We have to be willing to step into the uncertainty of, well, you know what? I know that I am inauthentic to myself, but who am I really? We have to lean deep into our shadows, because that is liberating our shadows, accepting, integrating our shadows is where our freedom begins. If we keep carrying the masks of our shadow, if we keep rejecting this whole part of ourselves, then we can never truly be whole. We can never truly feel whole. If we want to feel whole, we need to accept all parts of ourselves. That yes, I may be kind as a person, yet I also can be unkind. That I may be loving, yet I can also be hateful towards someone, or disliking, distasteful. That's the point, basically, is recognizing that there's more than one shade of who we are. We are all colors, in every shade, on full brightness, on the entire spectrum. There's so much more to who we are than we allow ourselves to see. And the interesting thing about it all is that our shadow is so unconscious. It is sneaky. And you don't even know that it exists. Like when we are not aware of our shadow, we genuinely believe that those parts that we rejected, we genuinely believe that that's not who I am. That can never be who I am. And when I come to this part, I'll give you a very interesting example from my own life. But let's get back to here, which is that this is your timeline, right? And these are all the different past events that have happened in your life that were hurtful. And also, a lot of times the shadow it doesn't even necessitate, said that word out loud so I don't forget it. So our shadow doesn't even necessitate that it's our own wound. Like something maybe you experienced as like a bystander, or maybe like it was like a secondhand thing. Ooh, secondhand reminds me, before I forget, the secondhand gain. What was my point? That was not my point. Secondhand. Yeah, so if you were like you saw something happen in front of you and you like it caused you some level of pain, then also you know part of your shadow is born. For example, there's like a 5-6-year-old kid who's watching their parents grow up. Jesus Christ, grow up? No. Well, yeah, but who's watching their parents get divorced, right? So that little kid, because it's so painful to see their divorce, might develop the belief that, well, relationships don't last, or if there was something wrong with the mom or something wrong with the dad, then women can't be trusted or men can't be trusted, or people always leave. All sorts of different beliefs, like the limiting beliefs that you have. That's correct. They're also part of your shadow self. It's like these chains that anchor you down, that weigh you down and keep you from being your truest self, being your most authentic self, being your most radiant self, because you keep lying to yourself. Freaking mosquitoes. The part over here is that, so now you've had all these different experiences in your life, in your past, whether it was something that directly happened to you, that someone said that to you. I remember years ago, when this is a very funny story and almost, of course, like quite childish, but it just sort of popped in my memory. But I remember when I was really, really young, I had a cousin who was my age, and she was super fair, Snow White fair, right? And people always used to like the adults in my family would always compare us, not consciously. They used to compare us, not like consciously wanting to be, what's the word, like belittling or whatever, but it was just like a thing that, oh my God, she's so fair and Anna's not. And I remember like so clearly that it was always like a thing that it was compared, my skin tone was compared to hers so much, right? That, oh my gosh, she's so fair, Anna's not. And then I don't remember how old I was, but I remember one of my mom's sisters, she lives in Canada, and she sent me this Bratz doll. I was super into Barbies and Bratz. I used to have like 30 Barbies and this huge Barbie house and a huge car for my Barbies. I was super into Barbie. And it's so funny because do you know that I actually haven't yet watched the Barbie movie that came out? Anyways, that happened. She sent me this Bratz doll, and her name was Sasha, and she was dark skinned, right? And oh my God, like I remember how much I hated her. Even though she was so beautiful, but I hated her. Every time like I would be playing with my Barbies, I haven't thought about this memory in so long, God. But every time I'd be playing with my Barbies, I used to like literally get her into like cat fights and stuff. And she would always be the maid. She would always like be the worst one there. And I would always just literally hit her against things because I was so mad at her for not being fair like the other Barbies. But I feel like that's such an interesting example of how the shadow works, right? Like that rejection, that me being angry at that doll, or was not because the doll, there was something wrong with the doll. It was because I felt unconsciously that I wasn't beautiful the way I was because my skin wasn't fair like my cousin's. And so I projected that on that doll, and I projected my anger because inside my heart, I felt ashamed of not having freaking Snow White fair skin. I'm so grateful for my skin color though now. Obviously, those are parts of myself, and I've healed and integrated in me, and I love my skin color now. But back then, like, it was like a whole thing. I used to always feel like inferior because I wasn't as white as her. But that's a very good example to understand different memories from your childhood, that sometimes it's not even that deep. It's the meaning we give to it, which, by the way, I'm going to get to, but I feel like if you've watched any of my other videos, something that I talk about a lot is that reality is neutral, my friends. Our meaning is biased. The meaning we give to life, the meaning we give to experiences, the meaning we give to people, that meaning that I gave when I was super young and like everyone was comparing me to her, was that I'm ugly. And so when I got that Brad's doll, freaking beautiful, gorgeous Sasha, I told her that she was ugly, like this inanimate object, right? Because that was my projection of what I was made to feel. When I go back now and I remember that moment, I know that I can go to my inner child and I can heal my inner child by telling her what I know now, by telling her that, hey, those people were just trying to be funny, or they didn't know better, or that's just how they were raised, and you're beautiful how you are. And here's the thing, right? And all these things, all these experiences become repressed parts of our psyche. And until we heal these things, we keep recreating the past in different ways. We keep drawing in experiences in our lives that reflect back to us what we are ashamed of, that reflect back to us the repressed parts of us. For example, I remember throughout my, I want to say 8th, 9th, 10th grade types, oh my God, this is such an interesting story. But every person I had a crush on when I was that young, right, was so fair-skinned. And I always felt like I'm not good enough for these people because I'm not fair-skinned. Literally, my whole thing was that, like, I didn't feel good enough for people who had a fairer complexion than mine. And I didn't feel like I was beautiful. And I didn't feel like I always felt like my other friends who are so fair, they're so beautiful, and I'm this freaking ugly duckling. And it's funny and it's easy to talk about now, but at that time, it was genuinely something that I was so ashamed of. And I felt like I had to wear so much makeup and do this and do that, and like to look a certain way, because I felt like my natural beauty wasn't good enough. And I think that as I think about it now, it's so interesting, because I think that for a really long time, it played out in my life in a way that I would dress up a certain way, and I would post pictures a certain way, and I would do makeup a certain way, just to get so much external validation from people, so that I could feel like I'm hot, I'm so pretty, I'm so beautiful, everyone's after me, everyone wants to be with me. And like, it was like a whole thing. And now, of course, like I don't care less. And it's because I've healed that inner child of mine that didn't feel like she was worthy or good enough or beautiful or whatever. And that allowed me to step into my power, step into my authenticity, step into this knowing that God, like I'm perfect the way that I am. And it's not like that, not to say that in a narcissistic way, rather like a very compassionate, accepting way, that I don't need to like go out of my way to look a certain way, to dress a certain way, to make myself feel like be a certain somebody so that I get external validation. And with me, it's very, this is how I am. And I am very accepting and proud of it. And it's not to say that there's not things about me that I continue to improve. Of course I do. Rather to say that I'm no longer ashamed of who I am. And that's a huge difference. We can love ourselves into evolution, but what we shouldn't do is shame ourselves into change. because I hate myself, I need to change myself. No, if I'm working on myself, it's because I love myself and I honor myself and I do know that I deserve better for me, from me. That's the whole mindset shift that we're going for. Now coming to this, that when we do not heal these shadows, when we do not heal that inner child wound, we keep attracting the energy in our lives that keeps reflecting it back to us. We need to complete the past to stop repeating it. In order to stop repeating the same energies, the same reflections back to us, we need to go back in time and heal the inner child. Now you're thinking, go back in time, what? Time machines are not invented, Anna. Well, let me tell you a little something about time. The thing about time, and let me tell you a secret. There is no secret. I'm kidding. But the thing about time is that time is very fluid, in the sense that the only thing that ever exists is the here now. The past doesn't exist, the future is not here yet, and by the time you're going to get to the future, it's going to be the present moment, which then means that at some point the past was also like the present moment, which goes to say that the fluidity of time allows us to almost mentally, energetically travel back in our past and heal the past to heal the present, which heals the future, in the sense that it heals the timeline that we're on. Like the energy that is in my field in the present moment is what will sort of dictate what my future is. If I'm still carrying energies from the past, that is what I will experience in the future. But if I heal the past and I complete the past, then when I step into the future, I'm going to have different experiences. So what we want to do is we want to go back and we want to heal that inner child. You can literally do that by remembering that past and like visualizing yourself, having a conversation with your younger self. I'll tell you, I did a lot of like inner child meditations and stuff in the past few weeks. And most of them, a lot of them were not like guided, structured things. It was just me like, taking a wound that I wanted to work with and going back in my past and literally talking to my inner child, like having a conversation with her and changing the way that she experienced that and almost taking learnings from it and allowing, my hair is like literally all over the place, allowing it to release, allowing that energy to release, allowing a new meaning to be created, because reality is neutral. So when we change the meaning we give to reality, when we change it in the past, we heal the future potential for what may have happened if we didn't heal the past. Whatever future that I have is a direct reflection of the way that I experienced the past. I experienced the past as I'm the victim and everything was shitty and life sucked and everyone sucked, or whatever meaning I got from the past. And if I don't heal it, if I don't let it go, if it's in my shadow, if it's in my energy field, then I will experience that in the future. But if I want a different future, I need to complete the past. I need to let go of those energies. And I need to come to this understanding that my future is a direct reflection of who I'm being in the present. And in the knowing of that, we can almost say that the past is irrelevant. And you might feel angry when I say that, because a lot of people are so married to the story of the past. I was one of those people, so I know what it feels like to be married to your past, to not want to ever let go because you think it defines you, except the only thing it does is that it shackles you. It keeps you stuck. So you can't, it's like when you're driving a car and you're looking in their rear view mirror. It's so weird. Anytime I say mirror, I feel like I'm saying it wrong. It's like mirror. I feel like it's supposed to be said a different mirror. Anyways, you can't drive a car forward while looking in the rear view mirror. You're gonna crash. So if you don't want to crash, then you need to look forward. And in order to look forward, you need to change your focus from the rear view and bring it to the thing. I want to say windshield. I think I'm right. Time is, fluid. When we heal the past, we feel the past, we heal the past, we change the trajectory of our future. Now, let's talk about how can you spot your shadow. Follow the shame, first of all. Where in your life do you experience a deep sense of shame? I cannot tell you that, because that is like such a deep shame that only you know it about yourself. That's like one of those things that you really hide. If this marker was my shame, I'd be like, I don't want anyone to see this marker ever, ever, ever. Follow that shame. And then get curious with it. Where did it come from? What makes you feel like it's something to be ashamed of? What perpetuates the shame? And get curious with it. Converse with your shame. The triggers. This is an important one. In our modern society, the word trigger is thrown out a lot. Oh, that triggers me, and that triggers me, and that triggers me, and you trigger me, and I trigger me. Everyone's always talking about triggers, right? Let's talk about triggers. Triggers. So what I want to say right now is that, with all due respect, a trigger is not something to run away from. It is an opportunity for us to lean deeper into ourselves, to notice what is that trigger activating in us. What is the signal that we are getting from our body when we are triggered, and why are we avoiding it? That's the real question you want to ask. What annoys you in others? A great example for this. For example, if you were raised in a household where, I'll talk about myself. I was raised in a household where you were taught to be super nice to everyone. You were taught, like, I was basically a people pleaser, right? Y'all know this. Basically, when I was a people pleaser, and now every time I saw someone stand up to somebody else, stand up to someone who was being controlling or manipulative or whatever. For example, oh my God, perfect example. There were some things, when I got married, there were some things in my marriage that were, like, did not sit well with me. That my ex did, but I didn't have like the courage, and I was too much of I'm so nice to ever say something about this. So I was uncomfortable about it, but I didn't want to confront him or anyone in the family, or I didn't want to cause a scene. I didn't want to create tension because I thought tension was bad, right? So I was talking to my brother, my elder brother, at one time, and I told him, I was like, this is going on, and I don't want you to tell anyone, don't make a big deal out of it, but I just needed someone to talk to confide in, really. We used to be best friends back then. And I remember he went ahead and he told my parents, and it became a huge thing. And I was so mad at my brother. At that time, I was so mad at him. I was so angry. And I thought that I was being angry because he did he did the opposite of what I told him to do. And maybe that, at some level, that was true. But it was more because I was like, how dare you stand up? How dare you create tension? That was the whole theme, that how dare you create tension? Because I had shamed myself for ever wanting to create tension, and I thought that being a good person means that you're always nice and you tolerate everything that comes your way. And my brother wasn't like that. He still isn't like that. He stands his ground, he knows his boundaries, and I admire that about him, right? So my point is that our triggers, like what we get annoyed about in other people, is a reflection of a part of ourselves that we may have rejected. I was annoyed at him for doing that because I had rejected the part of me that had her own voice, that could lean into tension. And I rejected that part. But the parts of your shadow, just like we're so unaware of them that we think that, oh, not me kind of thing. But really, it's when you see it in another person, the reason you get triggered is because it is a repressed part of you. So you get angry because you shamed yourself into repressing this part. So when you see someone else do the thing, you're angry because you're like, it's not supposed to be that way. I wish I had the liberty to create tension, to say what came to my mind, to stand up for myself, but I'm a good person and I don't do that. That was my illusion. That was my shadow. Lean into the triggers, right? What pisses you off in other people? For example, if you see somebody doing something that you believe is not, they shouldn't be doing. For example, oh my God, this is a really interesting example. There was this girl in my school when I was like in 8th, 9th grade, and she was like super loud and super chirpy and all that. And she was like, everyone would be like, I don't know, she's just like you and you guys would be best friends and whatnot. But I freaking hated that girl. I hated her. And later on in my life, I realized that the reason I hated her was because even though she was like me, she was loud and she was chirpy and she was all that, so loud. But the reason I hated her was because I was ashamed of the fact that I was so loud and chirpy and happy or whatever, because I was repressing parts of myself. It angered me to see her that way, if that makes sense. It angered me because I was like other people in my life shame me for being this way, and like it's not a good thing. We have this like very good bad illusion that it's black or white, and that's what the illusion of the shadow is. And so I didn't like her. And that the truth was that because I hated myself at that point, I projected that hate on her. She did nothing ever to like make me have a problem with her or whatever. Nothing at all, right? But I had a problem with her. I had beef with her. Thirdly, where are you holier than that? They're traits that we have where we are, for example, someone in my life used to be like, oh, I hate liars. I hate liars and I hate liars and I hate liars and should always be honest and integrity and this. They would make it to, there's one thing, if you say, oh, I prefer honesty and integrity because that's one of my highest values. That's one thing. But then the other thing is I freaking hate anyone who ever lies because lying is bad and you should never lie, and they're so loud about it, right? And it's like they project this sense of I never lie in my life, and 30 whatever years of my existence I've never lied to anyone. And the interesting thing about that person was that somewhere along our own journey together, in me knowing this person, I found out about a bunch of things that they lied to me about, and I was so shocked. I was like, wait, this is the same person who was so loud about you should never lie. Are you in your life holier than thou? Where do you have that attitude? Lean deeper into it. What are you trying to repress? What are you trying to not accept? What are you trying to reject in yourself? Look, we all have the capacity to lie when push comes to shove, and we all also have the ability to be honest. This is about recognizing that we are not one-sided beings, and a one-sided world doesn't exist. We have the light and we also have the dark. And when we embrace the dark and the light, we can walk into the world knowing that our darkness, or rather just like our dark parts or whatever, knowing that all parts of ourselves are what make us who we are. And that allows for more compassion, not just for self, but also for others. When we see them act in ways that almost trigger us, or we feel we want to be impatient with them in moments, then we can recognize that, well, where have I been this way in my life? And then we begin to see all of reality as a reflective surface. Reality is just data. It's a mirror. It's always the people in your life through their own journeys, through their own existence in your life, are reflecting back to you who you are. We cannot perceive something in another person that does not exist in us. And, that's not to say that it exists in you, means it goes to say that that at maybe an extreme point, in an extreme circumstance, you probably have the capacity to do that thing. Maybe you have never done that thing, but you have the capacity, you have the ability. We have the ability to be the most pious person, yet also we have the ability to be the most sinister person. And this is really about recognizing all of that light and all of that darkness, integrating it, and moving forward as who we choose to be, not who we pretend to be. And then finally, what makes you feel unworthy? Where do you feel you are unworthy? What do you believe makes you unworthy? Explore those feelings. And in one of my upcoming videos, I will talk about how to do shadow work and integrate these parts of yourself, integrate your shadows, and begin to live a more authentic life so that you don't walk around the world feeling impatient and angry and jealous and almost like always so easily ticked off. That you have more compassion, you have more humility, you have more presence and grace and love to give out, because you heal those parts of yourself, and you recognize that, hey, reality is neutral, and only my meaning is biased. When I can integrate those parts in myself, maybe some of them are some of my biggest strengths, but I'll never know those strengths until I am willing and able to lean deep into my wounds and confront them. Because we spend our whole lives running away from our shadows, only to find that it's only growing stronger and stronger every step we take. Maybe stop running. Maybe stop and look at that shadow and converse with it. Ask it, what are you trying to teach me? Where have I ignored you? And the process of integrating your shadow is also a very interesting one, and I will cover it in the upcoming videos, but I hope this offered you some insight and gave you things to reflect on and begin to expand your awareness on. Until we know what the full truth is, we experience our truth as the only truth. Reality is so much more than what we believe our truth is. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. And there's something in my eye, which is why I keep blinking. But, like, comment, share, subscribe, the whole shebang. Something in my eye. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.